Hey everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. I love that we get to explore all these little corners of language together.
Absolutely. It's fascinating stuff.
And today we're tackling a topic that might seem basic at first, but trust me, there's more to it than meets the eye. Future tenses in English.
Oh yeah, will, shall, future perfect. These are the building blocks of talking about what's to come, but they can get pretty nuanced.
Exactly. And to guide us on this journey, we have a great resource, a podcast episode called English Unlocked. Mastering will, shall, and future tenses. It sounds super practical.
I had a chance to listen to it, and they do a fantastic job breaking down the rules and giving real-world examples.
Perfect. So let's dive right in. I guess the most common way we talk about the future is with good old will, right? Like, it'll rain tomorrow, or I'll call you later.
You're spot on. Will is definitely the workhorse of future tenses. It's our go-to for predictions, promises, quick decisions, pretty much anything.
And it's so easy to use, especially that contraction of it just rolls off the tongue.
Absolutely. It's definitely the more casual conversational choice.
So where does shall fit in? I always feel like I'm stepping back in time when I use it.
You're not wrong. Shall has a more formal, almost old-fashioned vibe. Especially in British English, it adds a touch of elegance and politeness.
So like instead of saying, should I open the window, I could say, shall I open the window? And suddenly I'm at a fancy dinner party.
Exactly. It's about suggesting rather than simply asking.
But I've noticed that shall isn't as common these days, even in British English, is on its way out.
It's hard to say for sure. Languages are always changing. But while shall might not be as common in everyday speech, it still has its place in formal writing in traditional settings.
Oh, like a vintage car. It's not something you see every day, but it still turns heads.
Great analogy. You've captured it perfectly.
Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about will and shall now, but what about the future perfect tense, will have and shall have? Those always trip me up.
Ah, yes. The future perfect.
Ah.
It's like we're time travelers looking back from the future.
I'm intrigued, but a bit intimidated. Can you break it down for me?
Absolutely. Imagine you're standing in the future looking back at something you accomplished. You might say, by this time next year, I will have finished my degree.
Oh, I see. So it's not just predicting the future, it's emphasizing that something will be completed by a specific point in the future.
You got it. It's like we're adding a layer of certainty and finality to our future plans.
My mind is blown. Tenses are way more powerful than I realized.
They really are. They allow us to shape our understanding of time and add nuance to our communication.
This is fascinating stuff. I'm eager to learn more about the structure and uses of the future perfect tense.
Well, then let's not waste any more time. We'll delve into those details in part 2. Okay, so let's break down the structure of the future perfect tense.
I'm ready to unlock the secrets.
At heart, it's pretty simple. You combine will have or shall have with the past participle of the main verb.
Oh, like, I will have eaten or she will have finished.
Precisely. And just like with will and shall, the choice between will have and shall have depends on how formal you want to be.
So will have for everyday conversations and shall have for fancy speeches.
Exactly. You wouldn't wear a ball gown to a picnic, would you?
Not unless it was a very fancy picnic.
True enough. So to make sure we really grasp this, let's look at some more examples. The podcast mentioned, by next year I will have finished my degree. Can you think of other scenarios where the future perfect fits?
Let me see. How about, by the time you get here, I will have already baked the cake.
Perfect. It emphasizes that the baking will be done before a specific point in the future. Your arrival in this case.
It's like setting a deadline in the future and saying, boom, by then this will be done.
Exactly. And that's what makes the future perfect so useful for storytelling. You can create a sense of anticipation and resolution.
I'm starting to see how mastering these tenses can really make your writing or speaking more vivid and engaging.
It's like having a whole set of tools to express yourself more precisely.
Speaking of tools, remember those practice exercises from the podcast?
Yes, they sound like a fun way to put our knowledge into practice.
Shall we give them a try? I'm feeling ready to flex my future perfect muscles.
I'm game. Let's see what we can come up with.
Okay, how about this? By the end of this month, I will have read 5 new books.
Impressive. That's a great example.
Yeah.
And notice how the specific time frame by the end of this month adds urgency and makes it more concrete.
Now it's your turn to show off your future perfect skills.
All right, let me think. How about by the time we finish this deep dive, we will have demystified the future perfect tense.
Ha! I love it. We're basically giving ourselves a high five from the future.
Exactly. It's like we're already celebrating our accomplishment.
Okay, so we've explored the basics of will, shall, and the future perfect, but the podcast also mentioned some common mistakes people make. What are some things to watch out for?
One common pitfall is using will when shall would be more appropriate, especially in formal situations. It's like showing up to a job interview wearing pajamas.
Oops. So instead of saying, I will get back to you tomorrow in a professional email, I should say, I shall get back to you tomorrow.
Precisely. It shows that you understand the nuances of formal language.
And what about mistakes with the future perfect tense?
Ah, yes. A common error is forgetting the past participle. It's like trying to bake a cake without flour. Just won't work.
So instead of saying, I will have finished the report by Friday, should be, I will have finished the report by Friday.
You got it. Those little details matter.
It's easy to see how those mistakes can slip in, especially when you're not focusing on grammar.
Absolutely.
No,
But the more you practice, the more natural these tenses will become.
it's like learning any new skill. It takes time and effort to master it.
And the rewards are well worth it. Imagine being able to express yourself with clarity and confidence in any situation.
That's a goal worth striving for. All right, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I have a question about something the podcast mentioned. They talked about shall being used in some specific contexts, even outside of formal documents.
Oh, yes. They were referring to situations where shall expresses a strong obligation or determination, often in a collective sense.
Can you give me an example?
Think of historical documents like the U.S. Constitution. It says Congress shall make no law. Or company policies. Employees shall adhere to the following guidelines.
Oh, I see. So it's like shall implies a binding agreement, something that's not negotiable.
Exactly. It adds weight and authority to the statement.
It's like saying this is not a suggestion, this is how it's going to be.
You got it. It's fascinating how a single word can change the entire tone and meaning.
It's like those little grammar ninjas, they sneak in and change everything.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And it highlights why it's so important to pay attention to these details.
So it's not just about being grammatically correct, it's about using language effectively to get your message across.
You nailed it. And on that note, I think it's time for a short break. We'll come back and wrap up our future tense exploration in part 3.
Welcome back to our future tense adventure. I feel like we've time traveled through the nuances of will, shall, and that mind-bending future perfect.
It's been quite a journey indeed. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have, but before we wrap up, I'm curious about something the podcast mentioned. They talked about shall being used in specific contexts beyond formal documents.
Oh, yes. They were probably referring to situations where shall expresses a strong obligation or determination, often in a collective sense.
Oh, like in those historical documents we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Think of phrases like, we shall overcome, or the people shall not be denied.
So it's like shall implies a shared commitment, a powerful declaration of intent.
You've got it. It's not just a prediction, it's a promise.
I'm starting to see how shall can be so much more than just a fancy way of saying will. It's like a linguistic superhero.
I love that analogy. And it highlights how language can be so much more than just conveying information. It can inspire, motivate, and even change the course of history.
Wow, that's powerful stuff. I never thought I'd get so fired up about grammar.
It's amazing how these seemingly small details can have such a big impact on how we communicate and understand the world around us.
I totally agree. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the power of language.
And that's what we hope to achieve with these explorations, to spark curiosity and a deeper appreciation for the complexities of language.
Well said. So as we wrap up our future tense adventure, is there one final thought, a lingering question, or something we haven't touched upon that you think our listeners should ponder?
How about this? We've focused on how we express the future in English, but have you ever considered how other languages might approach it? Do they all have a future tense, or are there completely different ways of conceptualizing time?
Wow, that's a mind-blowing question. It makes you realize that our way of thinking about time might not be universal.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of exploring different languages and cultures. It expands our understanding of the world and challenges our assumptions.
It's like opening a door to a whole new universe of possibilities.
Precisely. And on that note, I think it's time to bid farewell to our future tense exploration.
Thanks for joining us on this linguistic adventure. We hope you've learned something new and maybe even discovered a newfound appreciation for the beauty and complexity of language.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep playing with the amazing tool that is language.